Sandy Alcantara has an ERA over 8. Alec Bohm has not hit a bomb yet. And Tristan Casas is in fact being platooned. Is it time to drop these guys? I've got those names and more on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominick Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Not here as always with my brother, my co-host, Matthew Ane. He's got the night off. But you know what? If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe to the channel and give you notification every time we drop a new episode. And all right, guys, you know we're locking in here, and we're doing must-drop players again this week. You guys loved the episode last week, so we're bringing it back for round 2 here in week 5. And this guy up first, I mentioned it up at the top, Sandy Alcantara. He's got issues, man, and they're not looking great. I mentioned the ERA over 8 through 6 starts. It's been 26 innings so far for Sandy. And through those 26 innings, he has 19 strikeouts, 17 walks, 26 hits, and a 1.65 whip. So, it's been tough. It's been tough. We didn't have to pay a crazy price for Sandy. It was getting a little bit higher. Spring training was pretty good for him. But I did have concerns. I wasn't jumping him up as some high as other people were, which, shows I don't have any shares of Sandy Alcantara. Last time we saw him, though, in 2023, he pitched, 28 games, for 14 ERA, 184 innings, 151 strikeouts, and a 1.21 whip. I'm probably thinking that's a lot closer to what, Sandy's going to look like this year. So are there better days ahead? Yeah, I think so. But I think the days of Sandy being an ace are long gone. Him being a very useful fantasy pitcher are gone. These days around here, if you don't know, we do the Snoop Dogg drop it like a Tato meter. And with that being said, Sandy, for me, if you're playing in any kind of shallow league, I think you could cut bait. I think you could cut bait on Sandy at this point. He's 76% rostered on Yahoo. And if you guys don't know, Sandy does play for those Miami Marlins. It's just tough. The team's not going to win a lot of games. I don't think Sandy's going to strike a lot of guys out. He never really did in his career. The only time he got a lot of strikeouts was when he pitched a lot of innings. And even if he does, I don't think the stuff is as good. If he pitches to a 4.2, 4.3 ERA the rest of the way with a 1.2-ish whip, 1.2 plus whip, I think that's about accurate. I'm kind of over it. And even in a 12-man league, I guess shop him around. I'm taking 60 cents on the dollar, 55 cents on the dollar. If you can get that, just the name value with Sandy. Someone thinks he's going to turn it around. You do that. But in shallow leagues, he's done. We do our must-add episodes twice a week. Check those episodes out. We've covered some pretty good starting pitchers on those episodes. Actually, I'll link the episode here in the description at some point. In the video as well. So you guys look out for that. But Sandy, on the meter, like I said, probably a 6 or a 7 for me. Shallow leagues, definitely cut bait. 12-mans with deeper benches, you're talking about probably almost 300 players rostered. It's going to get a little bit tougher in those type of situations. You could maybe hold out 1-2 more starts. Let's see who he's got lined up next. It looks like he's got a rematch with the Dodgers. Nope, not doing it. Absolutely not doing it. You got to bench him for now. His last 4 starts have been horrible. His first 2 actually weren't that bad, but his last 4 have just been atrocious. Like I said, there's better days ahead. But if he pitches to a tune of a 4, plus ERA the rest of the way, that's going to be what I'm expecting from him at this point. So Sandy Alcantara feels safe to cut bait in those shallower leagues. Maybe 1-2 more starts, but he's definitely riding your bench for that. Everyone that owns him that's listening to this, bench him for your next Dodger start. Trust me, don't think that's going to go well. We move from one former ace to another former ace. Dylan Cease is up next. And Cease, I'm a Cease owner. I got him at a real, bargain bag of a deal in one league, and I thought I made out like a bandit, but apparently not. Cease through his first 6 starts, 5.76 ERA, 1.62 WHIP, 29 innings, 36 strikeouts. All I can say is, thankfully, at least the strikeouts are still there because it's just been really, really tough. He hasn't picked up a win since April 2nd. He does have a good matchup next time against Cleveland. And under the hood, it's not like crazy. It's not looking crazy horrible for Cease. I believe in Cease a lot more than I do in Sandy Alcantara. And I will say this about Cease. He went from being on the trade for episode a couple weeks ago. Now we're talking about him as a drop candidate. Personally, I'm not dropping him. I do see some things in the pitch mix, though, that do look different. He's leading with the slider this year as to where he was pretty much even with the 4-seam and the slider last year. 44% on the slider this year, 37% on the 4-seamer this year, whereas 43 and 43 on those same pitches last year. He was getting way better results last year with the slider and the fastball. So, and the velocity on the fastball, actually about the same. So I don't even think it's the velocity, more of a movement kind of issue. And I think this is all stuff that can get figured out, right? Because he's still throwing the same speed. None of the underlying stuff really screams out to me, that he's any different than he's been in previous years. So he's another guy. It's going to be a high 3 ERA. The whip might not be a great whip year for Dylan Cease like it has been the last few years. Might be a 1-2 plus whip, but he's still going to give you the big strikeouts. And the thing is, if Dylan Cease is getting this, stinky stretch out of the way now, and we get that nice stretch for the fantasy baseball playoffs, still believe he's a trade candidate. On the drop it like a Tato meter, I'm probably going to have to give Dylan Cease a 0. I don't really like to give out zeros. Maybe a 1 if you're in like a 6-man league or something like that, and it's not super competitive and it's that type of situation maybe. But even there, I'm still you probably still have somebody worse that you could drop for Dylan Cease. Go out there, try and acquire him while you can. I think there's way better days ahead than, like I said better days ahead for Sandy, but way better days ahead for Cease. So I like me some Cease. Don't give up on him yet. Once again, he pitches for those Padres. Don't know if I mentioned that. He's still very highly owned on Yahoo, as he should be. This next guy, we're firing. We're firing up the drop it like it's auto meter. Gavin Williams, for me personally, 10. I'm over it. Matt and I preached him going into draft season. He had a great spring training. Matt and I are preaching him even more. There's something wrong here, man. This isn't the Gavin Williams that we thought, could be an all-star, a stud. This wasn't the Gavin Williams who was striking everybody out in spring training that we thought was going to be an all-star this year. He doesn't have it. There's something wrong. Could potentially be an injury issue. I'm not even sure, man. It's a 5.14 ERA for Williams through his first 6 starts, 2 wins, 1.57 whip, and 28 strikeouts through 28 innings. He's at Toronto his next time out. Only 38% owned on Yahoo at this point. Everyone's pretty much gotten rid of him. But if you're still holding, man, I can understand if you're in the 15, if you're in an only type of league, that type of situation. But, man, it's just going to be real tough to hold on to Gavin Williams at this point, man, because there's, there might be an injury. He's a candidate. I think they could still send him back, to the minors at this point. I just feel bad because the kid's so talented, and I really thought he was going to have a breakthrough year this season. This is one guy, that I definitely missed on this year because I thought the kid was going to be an absolute stud. But guys, with that being said, we got one more pitcher, and then we're moving into bats. And boy, do I got a great bunch of bats lined up for you guys today. So, because I got some great names right after this. And folks, did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. And then you'll be ready to play. Dive into 100 premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple. And, it's all going to be on your Fire TV. The latest technology, for elevated playing, with their Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode advanced technology. Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother and more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. Their endless entertainment with their 4K streaming. You can watch over more than 1.5 movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. And then, all right, guys, just one more thing here. If you're sticking around to this point, you're probably a fan of ours, Matt and I, and you're probably still being pretty competitive in your fantasy baseball league. And even if you're not, you join Matt and I on the Subtext platform. Through the Subtext platform, it's an in-depth personalized experience where you're going to get text message alerts going right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in these 30-minute episodes. And that's going to include when we do our waiver wire episodes, where you rank all those guys for you, telling you how you should prioritize them when you're picking them up. And then the best part, to me anyway, this is what I think is the best part. You get those instant call-up notifications for top prospects like Andrew Painter, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Mayer, and, all those other big names when they get called up. Matt and I are going to send you those notifications through Subtext with the text message alerts that are going to go right to your phone. And you're going to be able to pick these guys up before anybody else in your league. And that's just going to give you that competitive edge that's going to put you over the top for the rest of the season, right? So with that being said, give Matt and I a chance on the Subtext platform. The link's in the bio if you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And let's keep this thing pushing, folks. One more starting pitcher, and then we're going to move into bats. But let's talk about Yusei Kikuchi. Interesting name. He had a little bit of buzz coming into the year. Another guy that I believe had a good spring training. I feel like the story's been written on Kikuchi. He's a decent pitcher. He's been around for a while. The Angels just aren't going to win a lot of games. The whip's been bad this year at a 1.60 whip through those first 6 starts for him. Not a K per 9 kind of guy with 31 innings pitched, 28 strikeouts, and the ERA is over 4. Honestly, in 10, anything shallower than a 12, I think it's safe to drop Kikuchi for some of these hot commodities that are starting to arise on the waiver wire. And I think in 12s, it's an interesting case if they're shallow benches, and the waiver wire does have some nice options. I'm dropping them there too. I don't think Kikuchi should be 66% owned. To me, should probably be more like 35% owned at this point in time. There's just not upside here. There's not one category where I'm like, Kikuchi just has a bunch of upside and in ERA or whip or strikeouts or wins. It's just not any of the major categories he's going to help you in. So I'm saying on the drop it like a Tato meter. Oh, Gavin Williams was a 10. I don't know if I mentioned it. Gavin Williams is a total 10 on the drop it like a Tato meter. I'm just getting ready from pretty much everywhere at this point. Kikuchi, I'm following suit, probably like an 8.5, 9, just in those, deeper leagues where, you're playing a 15-man, or an only situation. Where the waiver wire is literally nothing, you could hold on to, Kikuchi and Williams in that situation and wait and see if you could grab the next big thing on the waiver wire. Because on those kind of leagues, the big things on the waiver wires literally go within, minutes of them being even thought of as a big thing. So a guy like Kikuchi is, like I said, 8.5, 9 on the drop it like a Tato meter. But let's move into the bats. Like I said, I got 6 bats today. We usually do 5 and 5, but I had some great names here in the bats. Let's talk about this first one. Interesting. Adley Rutschman. I mean, I kind of said it, and I know Matt was in on it too. We did mention him in the bust episode. It wasn't really about the talent with Adley at the time. It was more of the price you had to pay for a guy like Adley. And, I believe it was like a 5th-round pick, 6th-round pick in some situations that you had to pay for a guy like Adley. And it just wasn't worth it because the talent, just wasn't going to be worth the other kind of guys that you can get around there. 28 games for Adley, with those Orioles this year, 222 batting average, 14 runs, 4 homers, 9 RBIs. And if I remember correctly, I think he had 2 home runs, whether it was opening day or the second day of the season. I think Adley had a 2 home run game or something of the sort. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, but I might have been Adley. Could be wrong. But yeah, he's been real bad of late. I know he went 2 for 3 in his last game, but before that, just really struggling here. Not a lot of pop, doesn't steal bags. The batting average has been bad. He was, not really good last year either. So I'm not saying it's a drop for Adley, but I'm at least looking, like Agustin Ramirez, who just, came up. I know he's, more highly owned now. Hunter Goodman, all those guys that kind of had came out of nowhere. I'm looking for the next one if they're not already still on my waiver wire. I'll double check for you Adley owners who might be saying, hey, I really do need a guy. Hunter Goodman, 5 home runs, 268 batting average, Rockies catcher, also plays a lot of outfield, so he gets some, a lot of at bats, and 39% owned on Yahoo. Agustin Ramirez is probably way more highly owned than that. Actually, not 49% owned for Agustin Ramirez, Miami Marlins prospect, who's been actually cold in his last 3 games, but had a 2 home run game back on April 27th, which wasn't that long ago. He's been really, really good too. I'm not dropping Adley, at this very moment. If you're in an 8-man league, though, maybe. If you're in an 8-man league, I might be making that move to drop Adley. But, I'm at least trying to, roster Hunter Goodman or Agustin Ramirez or a player like that until Adley gets going, because you just can't be playing Adley right now. It's a real tough situation. And like I said, even the underlying stuff doesn't look as bad as it did last year. If I remember correctly, I'm just going to double check myself. Yeah, it doesn't look anywhere near as bad as it did last year. They're expecting the batting average to be a little bit better. He is, not chasing, whiffing, striking out a lot, but, all the stuff for power doesn't look great. He's not a guy that's fast at all. So, I mean, Adley could be even in, I guess, best case scenario, he could be a 290 hitter, but what is it going to come with it? Is it going to be 80, 90 RBIs and possibly, 20 home runs, 22, maybe? I'm just not big on Adley anymore. He's another guy like I was talking about with Cease earlier. Trade Adley while you can, while the name value still is what it is. I'll be honest with you. If Adley finishes this season as poorly as he did last year or even worse, he's a borderline top 10 catcher for me next year. And I know that might be a bold statement for a young kid like him, but there's something wrong. He's got to figure it out. He's just not profiling like the, top prospect that he was, coming up and, before he got drafted. And it's a tough situation. Drop it like a Tato meter is probably like a 2 or a 3. Like I said, 8-man leagues are exceptions here, probably dropping him in those situations. But other than that, for Adley, hold for now and just pick up, like I said, Hunter Goodman, Agustin Ramirez, and ride the wave with them until this gets better with Adley. But let's do one more here. Let's talk about Tristan Casas, right? I talked about he's being platooned. He's not playing, against lefties, and it's a bad situation for him right now. 181 batting average for Casas right now. Only 3 homers, only 5 runs, only 11 RBIs. I don't know if I said it. 27 games played, 65% owned on Yahoo. He's like a 6 or a 7 on the drop it like a Tato meter for me, guys. It's tough. It's tough to hold on to him right now. And unfortunately, our boy Vinny P, who's not in the episode, is right behind him. But Casas, until he gets this going, until he's playing every single day, it's really hard to hold on to him. He's definitely not starting for me. And I think in 10-mans, shallower than that, we can drop in 12-mans. If your bench isn't too deep and you need the spot, you need the production, your team is struggling, drop them. I always try and look at it like this, guys. I always try and look at it when I'm dropping a guy. I say, if he wasn't on my team and one of my opponents dropped him, would I pick him up? And that's always a good barometer. I'll be honest with you. It's always a safe barometer. Like say, and if you really, and you have to be honest with yourself. You can't say, "Oh no, I would." No, would you? And honestly, I dropped Casas. I dropped Casas in a couple leagues I had him in, and I moved on. And he didn't get picked up. Nobody picked him up. He's still sitting on waiver wires in a couple of my leagues. So Casas, like I said, 6, 7, 7.5 on the drop like a Tato meter in those deeper leagues where you have your AL onlys or situations like that. Your 15 men, you're probably still holding on Casas because he might break out. But I mean, stuff he's under the Mendoza line, the pop's not there. There's really not much to hold on to. But guys, with that being said, we still got to talk some Alec Bohm and his no bombs, Anthony Santander, and a couple of other batters coming up next. And all right, guys, let's talk about it. Alec Bohm, no bombs yet on the season. Not that he's much of a homer guy, but what are we holding on to Alec Bohm for, right? This is he's an 8.5 on the drop of like a Tato meter for me. He's still 73% owned on Yahoo. Maybe it's the first and third eligibility. Maybe it's the fact he plays for the Phillies. But, his first 113 at-bats this year, it's 11 runs, no homers, 8 RBIs, 1 steal, 221 batting average. I think we're holding on to hopes and dreams. I know Bohm had a little bit of a better year last year. We're going to run those stats here in a second. But it's just I always feel like he's another guy that's not really good at anything. He's okay at a few categories. Like last year, even like I said, we'll talk about it. 280 batting average, 15 homers, 5 steals, 97 RBI, 62 runs. You love the 280 batting average with the 97 RBIs, but that's when, Bohm is rocking and rolling. I think that's best case scenario for Bohm, once again, is what he did last year. And I don't think this is going to be a best case scenario season for the 28-year-old. The batting average has better days. He's been, better at batting average in the past. The RBIs might come up for him a little bit. But, even with that said, the cost of the full season, and if he still continues to struggle, could be a 270-ish batting average, could be only 15 home runs, could be even less than that. And maybe it's only 85 RBIs with 60 runs. So, Bohm, like I said, your corner infielder, 15 mans. We kind of get the situation, right? He's a hold in those deeper leagues. In your 12 mans, though, honestly, if there's something exciting on the outfielder, that's where we're talking about most scenarios. I'm dropping him. I'm cutting bait with Bowman. I'm moving on. I'm not gonna be mad if I miss out on a couple 2-3 hit games for Bohm with no power and no speed. It's honestly, it's not going to kill me. I can make up the RBIs and the batting average somewhere else in my lineup and get me something off the waiver wire that's going to be more consistently producing in my lineup. So Alec Bohm, big drop for me. Like I said, 7.5, kind of 8 situation here with him. This next guy, he's arguably been even worse than Alec Bohm. It's Anthony Santander, a new acquisition this year for those Toronto Blue Jays. I almost confused myself there for a second. But, he's still hitting third in that lineup. I think a lot of guys have been struggling there. I know Vladdy hasn't been great. Bo Bichette's been solid, but not, super great. So Jimenez is another guy. That lineup itself just hasn't been awesome. I think there's better days ahead for Santander. 175 batting average to his first 114 at-bats, 9 runs, 4 homers, 12 RBIs. He's kind of like a dozen and bunches kind of dude. He's not going to win you any fantasy league on his own, but Santander is going to, give you those weeks where he hits a couple home runs, 2 to 3 home runs, a lot of RBIs. And I think it's possible. I think this Blue Jays team is still better than they've shown so far, especially for, fantasy purposes when it comes to their production individually. But I think the bank's going to be better. I think it takes time to adjust to when you go to a new team. Matt and I always love to preach the fact that when you're moving from one team to another, and, there's so much stuff that goes into it we don't think about. We just look at the guys, we look at the numbers they put up, and we're not thinking about, well, hey, they had to move their home, potentially their whole family, their lifestyle, everything that goes on, new teammates, new coaches, all the stuff that the human side of it. And the human side affects all of us in our everyday lives, the things that we do. We try not to sometimes, but it does. I think Santander is going to be in for a better second half than he's, been producing so far here in the first. Gonna still potentially give you 30 home runs with a lot of RBIs and not a great batting average, but better than 175. He's 90% owned in Yahoo. I'm gonna give him a 1 to 2 here on the drop it like a Tato meter. I'm still riding the wave with him a bit longer. If you're in an 8-man league, shallow league, you could drop him there. But I would even say 10-man and deeper. You still might want to hold on to him at the end of your bench and kind of just ride the wave, see where it goes. Let's move on to a young blood. We go from a vet to a young blood here. Let's talk about Jonathan Aranda of those Tampa Bay Rays. His whole season numbers have looked pretty good so far here, but he's been struggling a bit of late. The last 2 weeks for Aranda, 39 at-bats, 4 runs, 1 homer, 2 RBIs, 0 steals, 179 batting average. 50% owned on Yahoo. 299 batting average on the year, 14 runs, 4 homers, 13 RBIs. He was a high-end prospect, had a lot of buzz around him, could hit for a good batting average, has a little bit of pop in his bat. He's getting to the point where, I still want to hold on a little bit with Aranda and see if he can pick it back up because I feel like the league's starting to adjust to him. And, now he has to make that adjustment back. I think he can do it. I'd say we're giving him maybe another week or so here, and if he struggles, through the end of this week, listen, on May 1st here today, as I'm recording, Aranda went 2 for 4 with an RBI. The day before that, on April 30th, he came in the game that he did not start and went 1 for 2. On April 26th, 2 for 4. So I think there's a little something here. I think in those shallower leagues, we can drop him. 12 mans, I'm holding. We're going to see if this top prospect can, figure things out here, in the early going. I think he can. Like I said, what happens is there's more tape on a guy like Aranda. The big league teams are paying attention to him because he's having a good season. He becomes a bigger name in their, scouting report, as the teams talk things over. Especially with the pitchers, he's a name that they're paying attention to now. So they're starting to figure out how to pitch to him to get him out. Now, hey, can Aranda say, hey, listen, this is how they're pitching to me to get me out. Can I start to hit these pitches? Can I take some, a little bit more walks or something like that? I think he's capable of it, but we'll see where things go. He's probably about a 3 to 4 on the drop it like a Tato meter for me personally. Let's move on to, I think, what's going to be our last name of the episode. It's Nolan Arenado of those St. Louis Cardinals. And, man, it's tough to see a guy like this, just kind of at the end of his career. I love Nolan Arenado. He's helped me. Nolan Arenado has helped me win a couple fantasy baseball championships back in the day when he was with the Rockies. Used to hit a lot of home runs, batting average, but he's getting older now. 243 batting average on the year, 13 runs, 3 homers, 13 RBIs, 1 steal for Nolan Arenado. 83% owned on Yahoo. I think that needs to come down to 40% owned, to be honest with you. He might have a little bit of pop left in that bat. I don't think there's going to be a lot of runs or RBIs. He doesn't really steal bags like that anymore. There's not much left in the tank. If I have to give it a number, closer to a 7, 6.5, 7 for Arenado on the drop it like a Tato meter for me. Just don't really believe in it. Don't think he has much left in the tank. Father age stays undefeated, and even our favorite players and former multi-time All-Stars unfortunately get beat. He's 34 years old. Even the underlying stuff doesn't look great anywhere. Except maybe just that he's not striking out a lot or whiffing and he's walking a bit. But the power's not there. The batting average stuff isn't there. He's not fast. Any of the 5 major categories, I don't think Arenado's going to be a plus in any single one. I'm moving it up. 7.5, 8 for Arenado on the drop it like a Tato meter for me. It gets tough. It gets tough this time of year, guys, because now we're a month in, right? We're a month in, and we really have to look at our rosters because this is the time where you might have missed out on some of the, the better ads here at the beginning of the season, right? And you might be, knocking yourself in the head a little bit, but there'll be more. So I don't want you guys to get too upset yet if you've missed out on a lot of them. There'll be a lot more ads. You watch Matt and I twice a week when we put out waiver wire ad episodes, and you start cutting bait with the Nolan Arenados. You start cutting bait with the Casases. We're holding on some of the more, proven guys or the guys who aren't as old, the Adleys, the Santanders, but, again, like I said, when it comes to Alec, Bohm doesn't really have, a specific skill set as to where we know Adley could be a super plus in batting average. The pop could come through, and in this lineup, he could be a plus in runs and RBIs. that potential's not there with a guy like Bohm. So that's what we're looking for. We're making drops, we're making drop decisions. If you join Matt and I on the Subtext platform, if you're still here, you probably, enjoyed the episode a little bit and you want to see if Matt and I have anything else to offer. Give us a chance on the Subtext platform. We're going to get you some help on there. You can send us your whole team. Say, hey, what do I do? You send us your waiver wire. We'll recommend some guys that you might drop, some guys that you might add. If you have any other questions of the store, or if you just want to talk some fantasy baseball, once again, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. The link is in the bio wherever you're listening or watching. Guys, that's going to be all for today. So please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Guys, we truly appreciate it. And until next time, see ya.